It's Sunday again. Hopefully I've got all the settings right this time because I accidentally hit the streaming button an hour ago. It's one of those things where you've got one window kind of covering up another and you want to click it, go back to the hidden window, and you click on the stream button by accident. So yeah, that's what happened. So far, let me try to shout out some people in the chat here. We got Chow Dom, Soundleys, Martin, and Nathan, and Unicorn Laser Eyes. Welcome everybody. I'm sure more will be along later and you guys can say hello because you don't want me to multitask too hard or I'll get mixed up and push the wrong button again. So anyway, not sure what's going on next weekend. It's 4th of July in the U.S., of course, and, well, the 3rd will be Sunday. So, and I'm not planning to go anywhere on the 3rd, but I don't know when the fireworks are, and if they were, they'd be at night when I'm not streaming anyway. So I'll probably be here as usual. Hey, I'm Lou. And the screen looks kind of funky because this website doesn't have too much concern for screen size. And I wanted the text bigger, so don't worry about it, it gets better. You notice this is Skeptic Project. They have 3 parts, movie part 1, 2, and 3 on the movie Zeitgeist. We're only concerned with part 1. If you look at part 2, it's a normie affirmation of the government conspiracy theory concerning 911. So everybody's got something wrong. We all do. There's people who call me names who think that they have nothing wrong, but I have everything wrong. So that's the way it goes around these parts. Anyway, we're going over Zeitgeist because people still spread the debunked claims of that movie and whatever else forms it took. And this is a while back. You can see this is from 2007. And we're going to look at another article after this that's from 2013, I think. So this is just kind of, a reminder sort of thing. And this first one, let's see, 7-Eleven was a part-time job. Yeah. We tend to not pay attention to those kinds of events in other countries. You know how we are. It's just a big country. And our news outlets, whatever you want to call them, fake news, don't tell us a lot of other things, and so if we don't, have them etched into our memory ourselves, then we probably don't think about it. But anyway, I like how this starts out. Peter Joseph, creator of Zeitgeist, believes that I am mentally ill because I disagree with him. Boy, can I relate to that. There are all kinds of people who tell you all kinds of things if you disagree with them, and you get people just jump on you for no reason. I have one, I don't know if I can share the screen or not, I'm not going to bother, but I have a screenshot of some channel that I went to a few days ago called Resistance Radio. Never been there before, but David Weiss was on and I thought I'd check it out, and they were talking about aliens being not from outer space, and I typed aliens or demons and got timed out immediately, no warning, no explanation. And then I asked when I was allowed back in why and what I did wrong, and I was timed out again and told that I was trying to draw attention to myself. So we live in a crazy world where that sort of thing happens, and people react like this guy on the screen saying that there's something wrong with you if you disagree with them. I get that all the time. Got this morning in a chat where, because I'm disinterested in another viewpoint on something, then I'm closed-minded, and if I disagree, I'm ignorant and listening to priests or something like that. That's just how the world is right now, and we're going to have to kind of expect that sort of thing. Let me see. I'm trying to keep track of the chats that I don't have to look real close to the screen to see, because some of the chats are going oldest at the top, and some are going newest at the top, and it's confusing. So, anyway, past the little drama thing that is common to anybody who disagrees with the mainstream, even if the mainstream isn't a conspiracy forum, which is against the mainstream. Yes, how dare I do my own research and reach different conclusions than others might reach. And, I don't call them names, but, what everybody's different, I guess. Anyway, this skeptic place says, at the time of the writing, Zeitgeist the movie provided their website with a verbatim transcript of part 1, so he's going to use that as his source instead of having to wait through the movie. I highly recommend that. There's one that I'm kind of working on now, a Christians dismissing the idea of the earth being flat and stationary as described in Scripture. And I went to the transcript, which is helpfully provided, and it's in an annoying format that, breaks it down every 3 seconds, but if you want to quote it, it's annoying. You have to kind of reformat it, but I am doing that, so I recommend it, and it looks like that's kind of the thing that this person did too. He says, if they say something in the film not included in this transcript, I will insert it in red. Their claim is indented, and then he corrects whatever they're saying there. Some things are true, such as that the Zodiac exists. By this he means the constellations in a certain order with certain names that everybody seems to agree on, at least in the Western world. He agrees that Horus was an Egyptian god, no problem there. So he's not going to bother with the things that are true. He's going to concentrate on the things that are not true. So, and wise advice for anyone, which he doesn't seem to follow in his own analysis of part 2 on 9/11, he says, I should note that just because it contains grains of fact does not make the movie factual. Okay? There's always, you're going to find mixtures of things and things that people do, and does not address the companion guide. And so he has a little outline here. So basically we're going to go through this: the sun, the Zodiac, Horus, other gods and goddesses. I might skip some of those details. Jesus and connection to other gods as claimed in the movie. This is not what the skeptic is claiming. Connections between the Bible and the Zodiac. The claim that the Bible is all stolen, that Jesus is a myth, and that religion is the one true evil. That was the conclusion of part 1 of Zeitgeist. But the reason we have to go over this, even though it's from 2007, is because people today, even people who think they're awake, and not the same as woke. I hate it that term has been co-opted by people who are anything but woke. But there are people who claim to be awake and aware of the lies of our world, who nonetheless swallow many of them anyway. So anyway, we're going to go over these claims, especially that religion is the one true evil. And I was watching, what we do when we watch TV at all, just for, entertainment purely, and knowing what messages are embedded in these things. Again, there was a slam in a crime drama series about, and we, like I said, we watch these binge watch. We don't pay for them. We don't watch them when they're running live. We just wait till they're in Hulu and watch it there. Anyway, making a slam against religion about all the evil was done in the name of religion, and nobody ever says, well, what about the evil done in the name of political views? What about the evil done in the name of, like today with the health scam worldwide, that all the evil that's been, how many people have died because of those things? I mean, it isn't, you can't just lay the blame at religion, even if you define what religion is. So anyway, back to the movie. It says that this is, when they're quoting the movie, so they've got pictures there that we're not seeing in this analysis. As far back as 10,000 BC, that's a claim we could dispute. Abundant with carvings and writings reflecting people's respect and adoration for this object. It rises, it brings forth, etc., etc. So you can kind of hear already that the Zeitgeist people are presuming an evolutionary kind of historical narrative. And that's a presumption that they can't really make, because it's a belief like anything else. They believe that there's been a steady progression from primitive to advanced, and the evidence is all to the contrary. But the ancient cultures understood that crops wouldn't grow, etc., without the sun. Never mind that water is just as important. They were aware of the stars. They tracked the stars to recognize and anticipate events. Imagine that. People say that without a particular Earth shape, you can't anticipate events by watching the stars, but people did it anyway. And you might notice my little water glass is a kind of, well, it's not actually a globe, is it? It's the only way you can hold water with a globe Earth, is in a mug. But anyway, it's a cylinder Earth, I would say. Anyway, the analysis here, the first part is fairly accurate, but when he begins talking about the stars, there's something I would like to call into question. He claims that they cataloged celestial groups. While this is true for some civilizations, others, such as the Inca, actually categorized the dark spots. I did not know that. Even though I've read this before, I totally forgot about it, that the Inca categorized the dark spots, the spaces where there weren't stars. And then they claim from the movie about the Zodiac, one of the oldest conceptual images in human history, this is a claim, it's not necessarily backed up, reflects the sun as it passes through the 12 major constellations in a year, 12 months of the year, 4 seasons, and the solstices and equinoxes. The term zodiac relates to the fact that constellations were anthropomorphized or personified as figures or animals. The above statement implies that constellations and the zodiac have always been connected and that there have been just 12. While the zodiac's exact origins are unknown, you wouldn't know that from watching the movie, the oldest known zodiacs do not have exactly 12 signs, and thus conclusions drawn from this cannot be trusted. There's a reason we're going to see that they pick 12 as normative and ancient. For example, the Babylonian zodiac originally consisted of 18 signs, and you'll notice these little footnotes here are to documentation. That's something that Zeitgeist doesn't do too well. And the Mayan zodiac consisted of 20. While the Egyptian and Greek zodiacs do contain 12 signs, I thought it important to mention that the 12 signs are not some undeniable truth that can be easily recognized in all civilizations. In fact, there are exactly 13 constellations the sun passes through. The missing one is called Ophiuchus, which is not counted by modern astrologers for some reason. So there's 13 constellations that the sun passes through. Yeah, I have seen that. I did a video on that a week or so ago. I forget what I even called it, but yeah, it's amazing that people who wouldn't touch the Bible with a 10-foot pole suddenly take an interest in it when there are Hebrew roots people teaching it. That Hebrew roots is drawing in people who are rank New Agers, anti-Christians, should be a red flag to people. But yeah, fiddling with nonsense, I think it's safe to say. But yeah, easy to divide. Anyway, they leave out the 13th constellation, and then they back to the movie. In other words, the early civilizations that thinks there's only ever 12 didn't just follow the sun and stars. They personified them with myths and relationships. The sun with the life giver, known as God's son. Hold on, and they're going to point out a very bad logical fallacy here later on. Listen, just make note of that. God's son. The light of the world, the savior of humankind. They're using Christian language here, but I want to get ahead of the analysis. Likewise, the 12 constellations represent places of travel for God's son and were identified by names, such as Aquarius, the light bearer who brings spring rains. In the analysis, the sun was not the creator god in all cultures, but rather only a few. While the sun was widely worshipped, more often than not, most religions believe the earth was given birth to alongside the sun and moon by a different god, or even in one case, earth is the back of a giant turtle. This is hardly something that can be seen through most religions and is a bit of a stretch. The whole purpose of saying God's son, S-U-N, the light of the world, the savior of humankind, is to set up for a comparison for Jesus. This person is not a Christian, mind you, and as I will explain later on, this article is completely inaccurate. And something else further makes little sense here. Here's the fallacy. If the sun itself is God and the creator, why would they refer to it as God's son, implying that the sun is not the God? I don't think they thought this through in Zeitgeist. Obviously, there's a lot they didn't think through, but they're trying to lead you and twist and ignore history in order to lead you to a foregone conclusion that the Bible is bunk. That's the whole motive of part 1 of Zeitgeist. So anyway, logical fallacy that they're pointing out here, that if the sun is God and the creator, why would they refer to it as God's son, S-U-N? It's just so obvious that they're trying to shoehorn the Son of God or God's Son, per the Christian spelling with S-O-N, into some ancient mythology. Also, as I mentioned at the bottom of this article, there was a segment cut out that said God's S-U-N equaled God's S-O-N, and this is also inaccurate because they're similar only in English. I point this out many times, that people still spread this as if it's some kind of insight. And the Bible was not written in English. I point this out too. People did this again this morning. There was no letter J in the Bible. There was no letter E. There was no letter Y, A, H. For Yah, the people insist on saying Yah instead of God. They think those letters were in the Bible. They're all English letters. The Bible was written in Greek in the New Testament, the Greek and Hebrew in the Old, and some Aramaic quotations. I feel like this part is a setup because it's implying that God's Son is the same as God's Son, S-O-N-S-U-N, even though the connection is impossible. We need to be reminded of these things because people keep spreading them. And then they go into the god Horus. They have a picture, a drawing, whatever, in the movie. The sun god of Egypt around 3000 BC. Lots of assumptions here. Egyptology is anything but settled. They keep discovering things that ruin their timeline, which I think is amusing. But anyway, anthropomorphized, blah, blah, blah. Solar messiah. These things should jump out at you. Had an enemy known as Set, and Set was a personification of darkness or night. Metaphorically speaking, every morning Horus would win the battle against Set. In the evening, Set would conquer Horus and send him to the underworld. This is the claims of the movie. It's important to note that dark versus light or good versus evil is one of the most ubiquitous mythological dualities ever known and is still expressed on many levels to this day. Analysis. At this time, he was the god of the sky, and Ra was the god of the sun. So Horus was not the god of the sun. It was Ra, or Horus was the god of the sky, and the god of the sun was Ra. Perhaps inevitable, since he was the sky, and eventually the moon and the sun were considered his eyes. So things changed, and you have to ask people, yeah, there's no A in the Bible, there's no Q, no nothing in English. At this point, he was known as Hero Qt, and by and by he was combined with Ra as the god whatever, I'm not going to pronounce it. While there was a battle between Set and Horus, it was hardly every night. In fact, the battle really only happened once, and had to do more of these other things than day and night. So this Zeitgeist person is showing no concern for timing or accuracy. In fact, day and night in Egyptian mythology was much more complicated than the film suggests. The goddess of the sky was called Nut or Nuit. Her name also means night. At dusk, she would swallow Ra, the sun god, and he would stay in her uterus until morning when he would be reborn. I mean, it's crazy. She wore a blue dress that was covered in stars. Set was the god of the desert. Wait a minute. Wasn't he the god of the sky before? Primarily because Horus cut off one of his testicles and became infertile like the desert. This is the sort of thing that the pagan religions make up. And this Zeitgeist is trying to say that this is what the Bible got its symbolism from, which is just total made-up nonsense on the part of Zeitgeist. At this time, Set was not considered evil, and it was not around until around 100 A.D., that is to say, after the Christian era began, that the Romans in Egypt turned Set into a demonic figure. Back to the movie. Broadly speaking, the story of Horus is as follows. Here's the setup. Horus was born on December 25th of the Virgin Isis Mary. His birth was accompanied by a star in the east, which in turn 3 kings followed to locate and adorn the newborn Savior. At the age of 12, he was a prodigal child teacher. At the age of 30, he was baptized by a figure known as Anup, and this began his ministry. Horus had 12 disciples he traveled around with, performing miracles such as healing the sick, walking on water. Horus was known by many gestural names such as the Truth, the Light, God's Anointed Son, the Good Shepherd, the Lamb of God, and many others. After being betrayed by Typhon, Horus was crucified, buried for 3 days, and thus resurrected. This is absolute made-up nonsense, does not come from history at all. So the analysis is, Horus was not born on December 25th. He's born on the 5th day of the epicomenal days, whichever that means, which does not even take place in December on the modern or ancient calendars, but rather between August 24th and 28th. But in terms of the rising of Sirius, August 4th, they are July 30th through August 3rd. His mother was also not a virgin. Horus's father was Osiris, who was killed by his brother Seth. Isis used a spell to bring him back to life for a short time so they could have sex, in which they conceived Horus. Not the same at all. I, as well as others and several Egyptologists you can find on the internet, know of no reference anywhere to a star in the east, or three kings, and newborn savior. None of these things are in historical records, and yet there are people today spreading this nonsense. And thanks for that link, Chow. Anyway, it's simply made up. I cannot find any source or information proving he was a teacher when he was 12 years old, baptized at 30, walked on water, thrown into water possibly, but not walked on water. Not even a good source for that. More so, I cannot find any evidence he was referred to as the truth, the light, the Lamb of God, the Good Shepherd. So Zeitgeist made it all up. And people are still spreading this as truth. Also lacking, and this guy, again, this is the Skeptic channel, and he's not a Christian. Also lacking is any evidence that he was betrayed by Typhon. In fact, Horus never died at any time. He later merges with the sun god Ra, but never dies, and certainly never is crucified, and therefore could not have been buried for 3 days and resurrected. If you want to look it up yourself, you can find documentation of Horus and Isis, and he has some footnotes here. And I forgot to put this link in the chat. There you go, to this article I'm looking at. This is the debunking of Zeitgeist Part 1. Zeitgeist the movie did not make this up originally. You can find several places on the internet that make such claims, but there are no sources or suggestions as to where this information came from. No matter who made it up, somebody did. It's highly possible all this originates from the Christ conspiracy, the greatest story ever sold. I think by Acaria, something I can't remember her whole name. She was a very common name in the message boards, the conspiracy boards back like 10 years ago. Now it seems like, how can it be that long? But all possibly originates from this book, The Christ Conspiracy. If you read the Amazon reviews, you can find a lot of people who point out how the information is completely unsourced. I went to Barnes & Noble, found this book in the Christianity section. What? Needless to say, it was completely unsourced and was like reading much the other Christianity conspiracy books out there. So if these claims all originate from this book, there's absolutely no evidence for it. I should note that this book is used as a source in the Zeitgeist the movie. So they at least tell you that they got at least some, if not all, of their material from this made-up fiction called The Greatest Story, The Christ Conspiracy, The Greatest Story Ever Sold. And it's worth pointing out the title is only one word away from the title of this part of the movie, The Greatest Story Ever Told. Horus did not have 12 disciples. He had 4 semi-divine disciples called Heru Shemsu, followers of Horus. He had 16 human followers. One can also find reference to an unnumbered group of followers called the blacksmiths, who accompanied Horus into some of his battles, nothing close to 12. So, back to the movie quote on the fake made-up fiction, these attributes of Horus, whether original or not, seem to permeate in many cultures of the world, for many other gods are found to have the same general, very general, mythological structure. Analysis, well as read above, these attributes really are not original. It seems kind of obvious to say that such myths would permeate many cultures of the world, generally because the claims made by the film, such as a sun god, good and evil, and so forth, are things most cultures have believed in. It's just common. All right, and so anyway, other gods and goddesses, the film goes on to describe with other backgrounds. They're going to talk about them one at a time. Another claim of Attis being born December 21st, crucified, placed in the tomb, and after 3 days resurrection. This explanation is not only overly simplified, but inaccurate. Attis was not born of a virgin, because it doesn't say whether his mother was a virgin. In fact, Attis was born after she ate the fruit of an almond tree, which had been grown from the blood of either one of these other people, the god of vegetation, responsible for death and rebirth of plant life. So it goes without saying that spring does not take place in December, nor is the change of seasons of crucifixion. There's no mention of any tombs anywhere, and seeing how he is dead all winter, it goes without saying that winter is longer than 3 days. I mean, when atheist skeptics, or whatever religion this person is, can point out these obvious, really bad unsourced, illogical claims, it makes you wonder how people who claim to be awake today still spread this stuff. So, Krishna, the god of India, born of the Virgin Devaki with a star, this is the claim of the movie, a star in the east signaling his coming, performed miracles, and on his death was resurrected. Traditional belief based on scriptural details and astrological calculation gives Krishna's birth date as the 19th or 21st of July. Krishna was of the royal family of Mathura, was the 8th son, born to the princess Devaki and her husband, whatever. According to references in the Bhagavad Purana and Bhagavad Gita, it has been interpreted that Krishna died around 3100 BC. No mention of the Star of the East signaling his birth in literature, nor was there resurrection upon his death. There is, however, some evidence in various tales that he performed miracles, but that's it. So is Zeitgeist a trustworthy source? No. Is the Christ conspiracy a trustworthy source? No. But people today claiming to be awake still spread this as truth that Christians like me simply refuse to look at because we're afraid. I think they're afraid of actual truth and research and logic. Then there's Dionysus of Greece, also claimed to be born of a virgin on December 25th. Never mind, the Bible never says that, and I think they get into this later. Jesus was most likely born in September. Anyway, was a traveling teacher, performed miracles, turned water into wine, referred to as the King of Kings, God's begotten Son, Alpha and Omega, and was resurrected. But the fact is, he was not born to a virgin. His mother was a mortal, and his father was Zeus. We know that Zeus had other male children, so Dionysus is not his only begotten son. Similar to the story of Attis, Dionysus died each winter, was resurrected in the spring. This is not December, much less the 25th. He did perform miracles, mostly involving wine, because he was the god of wine. I think the other name for this is Bacchus, if I remember. Anyway, naturally could turn water into wine. The titles listed above are not sourced in the movie. Can't find any evidence that these titles ever applied to Dionysus. But I did find the Alpha and Omega referring to the god of Christianity. Mithra. Interesting name. Myth. Why don't the people who play anagrams all the time with the sounds of words pick up the word myth and Mithra? So, curiously, they don't do that. Mithra of Persia, born of a virgin, December 25th, 12 disciples, etc., etc., etc. Worshipped on Sunday. The myths and legends of Mithra are numerous in amount and span several different cultures. Ran into a brick wall trying to track down this information. No evidence found for a birthday being December 25th. Only dates regarding a festival are October 8th and September 12th to 16th. And one in October. No evidence that he had 12 disciples, or 12 of anything for that matter. No Mithraist scholars seem to know about it. He was not born a virgin, but rather out of solid rock. I guess you could say a rock is a virgin, but that seems like a long shot. As for the sake of further information, he was born fully grown. There's no evidence of a resurrection or that Mithra has ever died. Roman Mithraic evidence dates to at least a century after the time of the New Testament. So who's borrowing from who? As stated earlier, the history of this god is highly complex, covers a lot of area. It is true that Sunday was a sacred day for Mithra, but only to the Romans, who did not make up the New Testament, and we have many documents preceding the time of any Roman church, and the secular government Rome had zero interest in Christian anything. All they cared about was that Christians wouldn't worship all the gods, and they were called atheists for that. Anyway, back to the movie. The fact of the matter, there's numerous saviors from different periods all over the world, general characteristics, why these attributes, why the virgin birth on December 25th, which of course they made up, dead for 3 days, resurrection, 12 disciples. Analysis, as you can have read above, there are no real general characteristics between these gods and goddesses. The only real connections that can be made between them are connections that can be made between most gods and goddesses. None were born on December 25th. None had 12 disciples or followers. None were dead for 3 days, though a couple do recursively die and come back to life repeatedly with the seasons. It seems as though the filmmaker was trying to speak in such a way as to bring about a certain set conclusions, regardless of the facts, And of course, the real facts state the opposite of his conclusions. So this person was simply out to discredit Christianity, nothing more. And didn't care what the facts were, and nobody who ever parrots this stuff cares what the facts are either. They can't call themselves truthers. Now they talk about Jesus in connection to other gods. The film goes into the direction it set itself up for. It begins to compare and contrast Jesus and the other gods and various astronomical connections. Birth. The movie claims Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary December 25th. No, it does not. The Bible does not say that, and he's going to get into that, of course. He was born in Bethlehem, announced by a star in the east. It wasn't three kings, but we'll go into that later, or magi, official advisors, actually, they were. He was a child teacher at 12, 30, was baptized, began his ministry, had 12 disciples, etc., and we've been over that enough times. While this is generally true, there are some things we already know are not true. A problem arises with Jesus' birthday. The fact is, December 25th was set as his birthday by the later Roman Catholic Church around 300 years after Jesus' death. That's even post-Constantine I and post-Council of Nicaea I. And one of my other videos I went through church history, and there were many councils and many Constantines. And people who quote Constantine or Council of Nicaea never even seem to be aware of that. Okay, since you're on the path of bashing false teachers, Bill Donahue could use some dissecting. Bill Donahue, don't think I know that name. Alright, well, post it under the video. I will be reminded of it later that way. Thanks. Alright, and the intent of the Roman Church 300 years later was to put it on a pagan holiday. Before that, it was generally celebrated January 6th. I don't know why, but it was. In the Bible, it describes Jesus' birth taking place in the late spring or early summer. Well, there's disagreement on this, too. I have to disagree with the skeptic here because, in my opinion, the evidence points to September, overwhelmingly. It's possible that there was a time when the lambs would give birth in the spring, but it's much more likely for a lot of other reasons that it was in the fall. Anyway, his rationale is the shepherds in the fields, but again, that's most likely to have happened in the fall, in September. Now, back to the movie. First of all, the birth sequence is completely astrological. Bare assertion fallacy. And also begging the question. And all sorts of other things. Anyway, from the consequent. The star in the east is Sirius. Just proclaimed. Not true. Brightest star in the night sky. Yeah, it's a really bright star in the night sky, but it's not the star that the Magi followed. Anybody by, any kind of reading would know that. Let's see, Bollinger, I know that name. Yeah, and he's one of those people you got to be careful with. He says a lot of true things, and he says some very dodgy things as well. I can't remember offhand which he did an interesting analysis of Revelation, but there were red flags that popped up later, but that's all I remember about Bollinger, or Bollinger, however you pronounce it. Anyway, they're claiming here in the movie that on December 24th, Sirius aligns with the three brightest stars in Orion's belt. Sirius is a set place in the Orion constellation. The alignment doesn't change. Anyway, these three bright stars are what they called in ancient times the three kings. We're going to analysis will go over that claim. All point to the place of sunrise on December 25th, so they follow the star. You see, they're just making up this stuff. But anyway, aside from the fact he was not actually born on December 25th, much less winter, there's no evidence of anything stated above. You can go back and check records of the sky over Bethlehem on December 24th, adjusting for calendar differences. The stars do not line up at all. And they're not even in the sky before or at sunrise. I don't know why he's talking about sunrise, because there's nothing in the Bible that says it was sunrise. Anyway, in fact, the last time they occur in the sky is 5 hours before sunup. This date was checked with all the years Jesus may have been born, 4 BC through 1 AD, and there's no evidence of the above stated. There's no evidence of the three stars on Orion's belt being called the three kings, outside of certain Christian legends, and certainly not in history. In fact, the Bible does not say how many wise men or kings there were. It only lists the gifts received. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh were just kind of a representative list to tell you that these were gifts normally given to kings. That's all it says. That these were official advisors, probably not kings themselves, who knew the stars, who saw a particular star, knew whose star it was, probably, speculation, probably because of the high position that the prophet Daniel had held many generations before. Otherwise, how would they know this? But anyway, they saw a particular star and followed it, and later, after they got to Jerusalem, or Bethlehem, they saw the star again, and it moved and then stopped over the place where Mary, Joseph, and Jesus were staying. This is not serious. You can't be serious. I couldn't miss that one. You can't be serious. We need a drum roll here. Anyway, and then the term mother. The red part was cut out of the final version of the film by the filmmaker. The Virgin Mary is a constellation Virgo, another bare assertion fallacy. Virgo in Latin means virgin. They had taken out this part. The ancient glyph for Virgo is the altered M. This is why Mary, along with other virgin mothers, such as Adonis's mother Mira, or Buddha's mother Maya, began with an M. They took that part out. I wonder why. Even they couldn't stomach that for very long, I guess. Virgo is also referred to as the house of bread. And a representation of Virgo is a virgin holding a sheaf of wheat. House of bread symbolizes August and September, the time of harvest. What happened to December 25th? In turn, Bethlehem literally translates a house of bread. That's a reference. So Bethlehem really means the constellation Virgo, a place in the sky, not on earth. Since when is the Virgin Mary the constellation Virgo? I fail to see any such connection has been made. Indeed, Virgo means virgin in Latin, but it also means young girl and maiden, as they really don't have a word that means both young girl and girl who hasn't had sex yet. The film claims connections between the names, but a problem arises in the mere fact that not every language on earth is written with the Roman alphabet, the one English uses. In fact, the name Mary in Hebrew is written like this, squiggly lines that my eyes can't see. Miriam, meaning excellence. And in Greek is written Maria, or Maria, however you know how to pronounce that, probably Maria in Greek. That thing that looks like a P is actually the letter Rho, R-H-O, which is pronounced R. It claims the symbol for Virgo is an altered M, but later contradicts this claim with the following. While it may look like an M, it's actually depicting the arms of a maiden holding a sheaf of wheat. So which is it? Is it the letter M in a Roman alphabet, or is it holding a sheaf of wheat? It goes on to say that like other virgin mothers, such as Mira and Maya, they begin with M. The main problem with this is Mira was not a virgin. Adonis was conceived after Mira had committed incest with her father, King Thais. Maya was also not a virgin. She had been married for 20 years, but did not conceive until a night where she had had a dream about an elephant sleeping by her side. Maya's name begins with this squiggly square here, not M, though it's a similar sound. Except for Mira, for thousands of years they were not written in the Latin or Greek letter M. As such, because Virgo symbolizes letter M, this does not mean it's related to the Roman letter M, and so you can't make that connection. By far one of the strangest claims is that Virgo is also referred to as a house of bread. It went through several astrology books, so this person is not looking in the Bible, okay? Went through several astrology books, searched the internet, cannot find a source for such a claim. They made it up. Bethlehem does indeed mean house of bread in Hebrew. However, seeing that Virgo is not referred to as a house of bread, there's no real connection. It seems as though a large jump was made in order to claim Virgin Mary means Virgo, and of course, following their claim that Virgo is also house of bread, Bethlehem is really a reference to that. The filmmaker cannot seem to make up his mind as to whether Virgo really means Mary or Bethlehem. Regardless of this, Bethlehem is a real place, and it was at that time as well, therefore a claim. And it was a real place at that time. Bethlehem is an ancient city. Therefore, a claim that it is a place in the sky, not on earth, coupled with the other evidence, holds no water. As far as winter solstice and equinox, I'm going to kind of skip through that because it's irrelevant. Saying the winter solstice, I'll go to the analysis. Winter solstice, December 25th, obviously implying that somehow that day is special. It occurs December 21st or 22nd, depending on where you are, not the 25th. It's not the solstice. Each day the sun changes position in the sky slightly, though it does not stop in the sky for 3 days. Though the filmmaker, it adds the word perceivably. There's a little out. They want it to stop for 3 days so they can be 3 days in the grave. The reason they use such language is obviously to imply that there's some kind of connection with Jesus, who wasn't born on December 25th. The other gods listed before and 3 days. It's also impossible that the Southern Cross could be involved, considering the Southern Cross can only be seen in the Southern Hemisphere, which Israel is not in, and Bethlehem is in the Northern Hemisphere. The filmmaker goes on to attempt to draw connections between the death of the Son, a crucifixion, dead 3 days, etc., etc. The problem, again, none of the other gods aside from Jesus were crucified. This could be an attempt to make a connection. Obviously, it is an attempt, but it doesn't work. The reason the cross represents Christianity, and by extension Jesus, has little to do with the Son residing in the vicinity of the Southern Cross. It actually has nothing to do with it. More due to the fact that Jesus was crucified by the Romans on a cross. That's precisely the reason, and I might add again that non-Catholics use an empty cross to signify the fact that Jesus got down. He was taken down, yes, but he rose from the dead, and it's easier to represent rising from the dead with an empty cross than with an empty tomb. The evidence shows there is no connection between Jesus, sun gods, the crucifixions, 3 days, deaths, and resurrections. So this movie goes on to say, but they didn't celebrate the resurrection until the spring. Duh. Because, there's their ridiculous rationale. Like mentioned above, when discussing the birth date of Jesus, the day of Easter was intentionally put on a pagan holiday. That's why it happens. This is one of the purposes for Nicaea, even starting with the first one, is when should we celebrate Easter? And they pick, what pagan holiday can we choose for this? Well, there's one in the spring. Let's use that one. And it is the first. Let's see, the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox, or something like that. That's pagan holiday language. It's not Bible language. The Bible doesn't say any such thing. Just like with Christmas, this was done to help more easily convert observers of pagan religions to Christianity. This is no secret. Again, we see the filmmaker attempting to make a very vague connection between the Son and Jesus, but it's impossible. And then the life of Jesus, 12 disciples, Zodiac. On what evidence are such claims based? Many traveling rabbis in ancient Israel had disciples. 12 was probably selected for Jesus because there were 12 Jewish tribes. It absolutely was. As we see in the book of Revelation, when it describes in the later chapters the New Jerusalem, it has 12 gates, 3 on each of 4 sides, named after the tribes of Israel, and 12 foundations, each named after one of Jesus' disciples. There's an obvious connection there by the Bible. That's why he chose 12 disciples. The number 12 is replete throughout the Bible. They think it's because of astrology, but 12 isn't the only number used in the Bible. 3, 6, 7, and 20 are considered holy and repeated throughout the Bible. So again, just made up nonsense by Zeitgeist and spread today by a lot of other people. And then the cross, we've already discussed that. They think it's a crossing of the cross of the Zodiac, Jesus shown with his head on the cross, because he was on a cross. Anyway, the history of the cross has very little to do with the Zodiac, and therefore using such a term as cross of the Zodiac is highly inaccurate at best. Astrologers don't know anything about any such connection. Cross is one of the world's oldest symbols and is known in every culture from the Neolithic era on, so-called. Therefore, it's quite obvious why pagans would use such a symbol. Making a symbol as this is not a symbol of Christianity is also very inaccurate. This is a very recognized symbol of Christianity, primarily because Jesus was crucified on a cross. Just because pagans use it before Christianity does not mean that it's automatically not a Christian symbol. Bad logic is what the Zeitgeist people use, especially when it has been used for 2,000 years. The film claims this is why Jesus in early occult art is always shown with his head on a cross. It's not the case. While it may be sometimes a cross of sorts, it's not the sun, rather it's a halo. Halos were very common for deities and other holy people around the 3rd and 6th centuries. In other words, post-Christian era, post-Bible. Many other gods and just regular holy people that have no connection to the sun can be seen with similar details. And they, again, give you sources. After the claims already debunked, the filmmaker again tries to make connections between Jesus the Son, etc. Good conquering evil, etc., etc. Connections between the Bible and the Zodiac. Talks about, I'll just go to the analysis. I'm going to try to save some time here because I got another article to look at. Now that the filmmaker has led the watcher into a certain mindset, it's time to kick it up a notch. The filmmaker claims there are many astronomical metaphors in the Bible, but provides no evidence to back up this claim. I mean, people do this all the time, saying such and such is taught in the Bible, like Christmas trees or whatnot. And it's like, no, show me the verse. And then they deflect and go on to something else. He then goes on to talk about how age is really a metaphor for the astrological ages, such as Aries and Pisces. There's no evidence to suggest such, and we will discuss it further. Makes various claims about the zodiac and the length of ages. Not necessarily inaccurate, but they prove little when discussing the Bible. Now, the Bible, supposedly by the movies, claim the movement through 3 ages, foreshadowing a 4th. Moses and the 10 Commandments, the people were worshiping the bull calf. He shattered the stones, instructed people to kill each other to purify themselves. No, he instructed them to kill the idolaters. Yes, it was a purification, but he didn't say everybody kill each other. Most biblical scholars would attribute this anger to the fact that the Israelites were worshiping a false god. The reality is, no, we don't know what we're talking about. The golden bull is Taurusable. No, it wasn't. Absolute made-up nonsense. This is why the Jews blow the ram's horn? No. Not because of Aries the ram. Moses represents the new age of Aries? No. Anyway, the filmmaker discusses this thing with Moses coming down with the 10 Commandments. According to the film, we ran over this, it's far more likely that the reason the Jews use the ram horn is because they raise sheep. They were handy. They were there. And a horn can be made into an instrument. These claims are not substantiated with history, primarily because the movie says the age of Aries was from 2150 BC to 1 AD. However, the earliest dates given by scholars for Exodus does not place it until over 650 years after that age began. A little late for Moses to start a new age and get angry that nobody else had caught on. And then the fish. They talk about the age of Aries and the age of Pisces. Pisces was the fish. Blah, blah, blah. Just like with Moses, we run into various problems with the claims. Age of Pisces represented by 2 fish, but the filmmaker chooses his words carefully. He gleefully mentions that Jesus fed 5,000 with 2 fish, but he chooses not to mention the amount of bread. Why isn't that significant? The passage in the Bible says we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That's one of the incidences. There was another with 4,000 people with different numbers of fish and bread. The reason he doesn't mention the amount of bread is so the parallel between the Zodiac and the Bible fits. Force-fitting, cherry-picking. It's not out of the ordinary that fish is mentioned because it was a food staple. They lived by the sea and a lot of people made their living catching fish. Bread and fish is very common food. It goes on to say that the fish is the symbol on the back of people's cars is actually a pagan astrological symbol for the sun's kingdom during the age of Pisces. Nothing could be farther than the truth. It doesn't fit the parallel of the Zodiac. The fact is that the ancient and classical Greek word for fish is ichthus, which is an acronym for Jesus Christ, God, Son, Savior. The beginning letter of each of those words in Greek. Plus, the fish is a very easy symbol to... So if anything, an original Christian symbol was the fish because you could draw it easily in the sand, 2 little curved lines, and because of what it symbolized, the word fish symbolized. And so anyway, they go over Passover here. They make up the fact, they try to say that Jesus tells his disciples about where to prepare the Passover after he's gone, but after he's gone was taken out of the movie because Jesus didn't say that. So following, Aquarius with the water and all this nonsense, the film talks about this passage, by far the most revealing of all the astrological references. The problem here is it does not reveal anything except that the filmmaker has completely misquoted the Bible. So the filmmaker's a liar. While the reply from Jesus is correct, the question the disciples asked is not. The filmmaker claims that the man bearing the picture actually symbolizes the age of Aquarius, but let's take a closer look. There's the actual quote. It's about Passover, and Jesus said, "Prepare the Passover for us. Where do you want us to prepare it?" As stated above, the disciples are not acting about where the next Passover will be, but rather where they would be eating that night. Aside from that, the symbolism in the movie is inaccurate. The movie describes Aquarius as always pictured as a man pouring out a pitcher of water. However, the Bible passage, the man is not pouring out the water, but carrying it. Revelation and the Ages and the End of the World. Talks about the world age, and people always think, I had someone just this morning presume that I was a King James only. Where they got that, I have no idea, but I'm the farthest thing from it. The word is eon, that's true. It means age, that's true. But how they used it in a sentence tells you whether it's talking about, when they say something like ages and ages, they're saying eternity. They didn't have a word for eternity. So they said, and an age, if you look in the lexicons, is defined as, eon is defined as an unknown period of time. Well, eternity is an unknown period of time. So there's no big deal they're trying to make here out of the word eon. Anyway, if the King James Version is so incorrect, why are they using it? If they know the King James Bible has inaccuracies, why are they quoting it as something the Bible teaches? They're not even being consistent with themselves. The only possible reason would make a more general attack. This is very common of the cults to use the King James for that very reason, because it can be easily twisted to their agenda. So they can spin words and mistranslations however they please. Well, the word for world is actually aeon, but it actually, when the Bible talks about the world, it uses the word cosmos, system. So the critic here is kind of a little mixed up, I think. But anyway, I think it's interesting how the filmmaker dismisses the book of Revelation as cartoonish depictions, even though it contains the majority of the end-time predictions, and it references a large portion of the Old Testament. It's no doubt because he could not draw a parallel. So he dismissed Revelation because he couldn't draw a parallel between the Zodiac and Revelation. Only with Matthew 28 in the King James. All the arguments work this way. He selects what agrees with him, ignores everything else. The film also claims that Matthew 28 is the main source for Christian knowledge of the end times. No, it isn't. We have all sorts of passages that they list here. And the claim of the movie that the Bible is all stolen. The character of Jesus, and they're recapitulating all the lies that they've spread before. As I debunked earlier in the Jesus section of this page, I showed that Horus and Jesus had little in common, and that Horus's life didn't have anything to do with these claims, that there are very few and far between similarities, so the claim is absolutely false, all these claims made by Zeitgeist. And then the Ark. The plagiarism is continuous, claimed by the movie. The story of Noah's Ark, taken from tradition, and the concept of a great flood is ubiquitous throughout the ancient world. Well, that's true, and they're going to get into this, but I would just say, when all the cultures of the world have a story about an ark with 8 people who survive a flood, there was probably a historical event that everyone knew about where a flood destroyed the earth and only 8 people survived on an ark. It supports the Bible story. It doesn't mean the Bible took it from... Why don't they think that the Mayans took it from the Hebrews? Why don't they think that the Hindus took it from the Mayans? They don't say that. It's always only the Bible taking it from somebody else. It's a blind prejudice. Anyway, and then they talk about Gilgamesh, blah, blah, blah. Indeed, there are many similarities between the story of the Ark and various flood stories. I don't deny the similarities. The story of the Ark is probably heavily influenced from a Babylonian tale. Well, which one is the original is the only question. In my opinion, it's the Bible, of course, but there was a flood. Does not imply anything other than the idea of the entire world flooding and one man saving all animals is a popular story. Well, it's popular because all cultures remember this. If the Bible is on trial for plagiarism of the story of the Ark, why doesn't the filmmaker mention the other stories as forgeries? And then Moses. They think that's plagiarized. Like most claims made by the movie, it can apply to many others. In fact, the story is similar but not directly lifted. Anyway, I'm going to skip over the rest of this as far as that goes to the 10 Commandments, etc. And they say that Jesus Christ is a myth, where even atheists like Bart Ehrman, the atheist scholar, there's a video clip of him saying that absolutely Jesus existed, and the Wiki article on Jesus, and Wiki is not predisposed to support Christianity. So also a hostile witness that says the overwhelming majority of scholars are convinced that Jesus of Nazareth existed, was baptized by John the Baptist in the Jordan River, and sentenced to death by Pontius Pilate in the 1st century. So this is not a question. Anyone who says that Jesus didn't existed is totally ignorant or lying. There's only two options. So, this, unfortunately for the movie, these quotes are taken out of context. I had to track down where he took the quotes from, found them in something called the First Apology. If you read these chapters, he's not saying these gods are the same as Jesus. Whether he's saying that, though, they are both gods and held highly by the people, he will prove Jesus is superior. That is from Polycarp, I think. I think they mentioned that Justin Martyr, sorry. When he says we propound nothing different, he's saying this, not saying the stories are the same. He's saying that we're not saying your gods aren't great, but ours is better. So the Zeitgeist guy misunderstood what he was reading in Justin Martyr. Anyway, Judas and Judah, I'm not going to go into that. Jesus and others like him. I think we've made the point already that Jesus existed and the Bible isn't plagiarizing. And Son, we've been over before. This is a very long article, as you can see. I think we're about done with it anyway. Their conclusion of Zeitgeist: Christianity, along with all other theistic belief systems, is the fraud of the age. This is the premise they started with. So a giant begging the question fallacy, presuming the consequent, etc., by Zeitgeist and everyone who parrots it. And so this is, like I said, the reason we even have to go over this is because people still parrot this ridiculous lie. It served to detach the species from the natural world, that all religion, especially Christianity, they always single this out. Detaching people from the world. The Bible does no such thing. Christianity does no such thing. Supports blind submission to authority. No, it doesn't. It appeals to eyewitnesses and logic and reason and evidence. The movie claims it reduces human responsibility to the effect that God controls everything. That's a Calvinistic idea. Anyway, the conclusion is obviously trying to bring the viewer to a final point. After the filmmaker has proven to you that all the religions have stolen from each other, chiefly that Christianity is the one stealing from everybody else, he then goes on to lead you to the conclusion that all religions are evil and support all horrible things. While this true religion can be bad, it's also good for some people, and I might add that politics can be bad, scientism can be bad. I think there are many more people who will have died by the end of it all from science and blind political power than religion, especially Christianity. It's also be good for some people if religion was created to control people. Then how can one view a film which is full of absolutely false statements about mythology, religious history, Judaism, and Christianity itself? What's the purpose of Zeitgeist? If Christianity and the Bible were written to control people, what is Zeitgeist doing? It's no different. In fact, it's far worse, because at least the Bible is based in demonstrable evidence. So, anyway, then they go on to 9/11, but, I obviously disagree with about that. But you can see that when a skeptic who isn't a Christian can blast the claims of Zeitgeist out of the water, that Zeitgeist doesn't have a leg to stand on, and anybody who quotes and perpetuates these lies is totally ignorant or lying. Okay, so now I'm going to go quickly to this one about some astrotheologist by the name of Santos Bonacci, who pops up every now and then on somebody interviewing him and telling him how profound he is. But another non-Christian writes in 2013, Santo Bonacci, ex-Luciferian and ex-Jehovah's Witness. So if you ever hear of this guy, he's an astrotheologist and syncretist. That's his roots. Again, hostile witness. Disinformation. Santos Bonacci and the holy science he's preaching is one of many disinformation agents running around promoting sun worship and the condemnation of Christianity. Again, it's always Christianity that's being condemned. His work includes an old trick used by the now debunked Zeitgeist film. That's why I'm bringing him up now. His work includes an old trick used by the now debunked Zeitgeist film, claiming that the Holy Bible is an astro-theological hybrid. There are lots of people, I'm sure some of you know, making this claim still, and saying that anyone, especially me, who disagrees with them has their head in the sand, or is evil, or an agent, or whatever they want to say. Closed-minded, I was called today the most closed-minded person this other person had ever met. The person I had to ban a few weeks ago, or was it just last week? I don't remember. Anyway, claiming I'm very closed-minded because I don't listen to him. What if I'm just not interested? What if I've been around long enough to have heard everything already? Anyway, he claims that the Bible is an astrotheological hybrid, a fancy term which means it's a metaphorical story. There are Christians making it a metaphorical story, like Michael Heiser, expert in ancient Semitic languages, etc., who believes that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat and stationary and was made in 6 days, but he believes that science trumps all of that, and so the Bible must be metaphor. He's not doing anything different than Santos Bonacci or Zeitgeist or any other astrotheologist. I'm not saying he's not a Christian. I'm saying he's not consistent. And when it comes to interpretation, he totally drops the ball. Anyway, chronicling the journey our beloved sun takes along the constellations of our solar system. A website called the Zeitgeist Challenge has, since October 2010, been offering $1,000 to anyone who claims they can prove anything mentioned in the entire first part of the first Zeitgeist movie about religion. Nobody picked it up. No other film has claimed such nonsense, but here to revive an old idea in hopes of appearing credible using a whiteboard and a vivid memory is Santos Bonacci. He claims that when we nod our heads to say yes, it's because the sun rises and sets. I kid you not. Again, this is a hostile, non-Christian witness. He claims that anybody whose name starts with Ra, like Randy or Raphael or Rachel, is in reference to the sun. He believes that the word hour comes from the name Horus, and that when we ask what hour is it, which nobody asks, we ask what time it is, it comes from asking where Horus is in the sky. Fun fact. Etymology, the study of the origin of words, tells us that hour comes from an old French word, hore, which means 1/12 of the day. And hore comes from the Latin word hora, which means season or time, and the Greek word hora, which means any limited time. Moreover, the etymology of the word hour here, it would be worth using that website to look up the rest of his ridiculous claims about the origin of popular words. They're simply not true. Bonacci is a liar. I could make up a story linking the word yogurt to yogis and the yo-yo. But the fact is there's only 26 letters in the alphabet with only 6 vowels to choose from in most cases. There will be similarities. We've got people today running around the chats playing anagrams basically, and calling it research or insight. Disinformation agents utilize bits of truth to rope the viewer in so that you trust the person giving you the information. And people say, I listen to priests. I had that told to me this morning by the same person I had to ban. Once they have your trust, they insert lies, and many of them hoping you will not do the background work to verify the claims because you now trust that you're hearing the truth. Anytime people hear something different that gets them off the hook of being accountable to God, which is something I might do next week, they jump on it and run with it, leaving you misinformed and chasing down a rabbit hole that leads to nowhere. These disinfo agents are also called gatekeepers by many truth seekers. We know of many, such as Rob Skiba, gatekeepers who, they and misdirection. You mentioned Karen B. and who did she have on Just Jack? Another hostile Hebrew rooter. Anyway, I did a video on them not so long ago, and I think Chow already linked to it. Guarding the real truth from those who search for it by using lies and distractions. You may be wondering how I know Santos Bonacci is a disinfo agent. So this person is about to tell you where they got their information. Feed is cutting in and out. YouTube says I have an excellent connection, so I'm not sure. Okay. Other than the fact that he takes truths from Vedic astrology, which comes from Hinduism, and mixes them with, and they tell us that we're the religious people, and mixes them with falsehoods perpetuated by the Zeitgeist films. He cites one of his idols as being Manly P. Hall. We all know that word. This is the key. Manly P. Hall was a 33rd degree Freemason. Anybody who's promoting Manly P. Hall is promoting Freemasonry, whether they like it or not, which means he was Luciferian. Whether Satan exists or not is irrelevant to this person who's not a Christian. Do you want a Luciferian teaching you what to believe? Christians are worse? A lot of people seem to think so. The day has come when fellow craftsmen must know and apply their knowledge. This is a quote from Manly P. Hall. It's not well edited here in this article. The lost key to their grade is the mastery of emotion, which places the energy of the universe at their disposal. Man can only expect to be entrusted with great power by proving his ability to use it constructively and selflessly. When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is a proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. This is Freemasonry. This is Manly P. Hall writing this. And this is what Santos Bonacci and a lot of other people are promoting, Manly P. Hall. And before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy. He must follow in the footsteps of his forefather, Tubal Cain, who with the mighty strength of the war god hammered his sword into a plowshare. Wow. So there's the quote, Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree, Lost Keys of Freemasonry, or The Secret of Hiram Abib, forwarded, etc., etc. This is where, if you want to look up the book, there it is. Bonacci quotes other Luciferians in his lectures as well, including Michael Tsarion, I also know that name, who has been debunked. Tsarion is also friends with Jordan Maxwell, another big name in conspiracy realm, who is a Freemason and an actor, who also played Bill Cooper. More on that, and they have links here that have been lost in, evidently this is a reposting of an article. Bonacci also recommends you read books by Jordan Maxwell. In fact, most of his book recommendations are of an anti-Christian nature that attempts to blame religion, Christianity that means, for the problems of the world. This is what all of them have in common. Nobody is refuting the fact that organized religion has seen its dark days, but so has organized culture. America, anybody? Do we condemn all organized culture too? No, we condemn those who make the choice to kill their fellow man in the name of organized culture or in the name of God. You cannot blame a thing, just as you cannot have a war on terror, because the battle will never be won and you'll get nowhere. Why do you think they have a war on terror or a war on drugs? Those of you who hate Christianity are not seeing the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is not that you must believe in Jesus, this person is saying, but that hatred toward a thing will not make it go away. It will only cause further division among the people. People who claim they want truth and peace and hate Christianity are talking with a forked tongue. This person says, I am not a Christian, nor am I religious by any stretch of the imagination. However, I do believe in God, so they're basically a deist. And I do believe that when you have faith in the Creator, you are less apathetic. And then they go on to explain that. That is a fact. The agenda that these disinfo agents, including Santos Bonacci, is clear. Strip people of their faith, especially Christians, it seems. It is true, in my experience as well, so that they become apathetic. Spread Luciferian beliefs and mask them as New Age, can be anyone, to rope in three thinkers and others into the one world religion to bring people together for the New World Order. Again, this is a non-Christian saying this. They will talking about a future article about plans to create the New World Order with the Luciferian agenda included, but for now just know that this man is spreading disinfo as a gatekeeper of the truth. And the edit, if you want more information, look up sun worship and Luciferianism. If you're still a Santos Bonacci fan, have you ever asked yourself the question, why does Santos Bonacci care so much about what everyone else thinks about Christianity and astrotheology? Why are they so much more obsessed with this than anyone else, than any Christian is? It's as simple as that. Ask the questions. No matter how hard he tries, he can't prove himself to be correct. He can only talk everyone into believing what he says until they do. And that's what he's currently doing. And then there's a comment here. Let's see, about something about bad treatment that I remember reading here that someone had experience with. Here it is. 8 years ago by someone, my Sascan, whatever by their freeze. I think the most revealing thing about the interview that Santos did with Kevin Annett and Kate of Gaia, so he did this interview, was the absolute vitriol the three of them spewed when discussing myself and others who have questioned his actions. To have someone who preaches the way to find your higher self and your higher consciousness by giving and receiving love, I've never experienced so much hatred. By their fruits you'll know them. That's why he said this. There's a biblical statement, obviously, that Jesus said. They say one thing and do another. These people, these New Agers, talk about peace, love, etc., and for your higher self, spew out hatred against Christians. What was really disgusting is how gleeful Kate and Kevin were about the prospect of bodily harm coming to myself and another blogger. I've written to Santos asking for his thoughts about Kevin after that show aired and invited him to dialogue with me in a respectful manner and even asked for apology. I'm yet to hear from him. This is what they all do. And you can, it's not just the people I've mentioned, the Hebrew Rootsers and the New Agers, but there's also, who was it? The name just flew right out of my head. Well, Rob Skiba is another one who, Hebrew Roots obviously, but these people are very nasty to anyone who disagrees with Hebrew Roots. It's why I got banned twice by a Hebrew Rootser in the 24/7 Discord. Just for being a Christian. There's no other reason. No reason was actually given, but this has been the motive. There's been nothing but hate from that person and their friends the whole time I was there. The times I managed to go between bannings, and I'm not going back there because management does nothing about it. I talked about that before. But I think you get the picture about Zeitgeist and Luciferians and the people who still spread that today. When you see, remember these things that I've been reading off today, and you'll know what kind of a person you're talking to. Either someone who's spreading disinfo knowingly, in which case they're a liar and a deceiver and Luciferian, or unknowingly, unwittingly, which means they're being duped and spreading falsehood by not doing the work of being skeptical of their gurus. And people think that we're not skeptical enough, that we're closed-minded. I haven't looked at the chat. I've been busy trying to keep the train of thought here, but is there anything that you need to bring to my attention right now before we shut down? Let's see. Someone called Globe Cultists say hate God and hate Christians, hate this person, hate that person. My name is spitting hate at people doesn't prove anything, but that you're a hateful person. And yeah, I get vitriol also from King James Onlyists, Hebrew Roots, people who hate the pre-trib rapture or any rapture at all, who hate dispensationalism, who hate anything but Calvinism. Calvinists will be this way. I've heard some really nasty things from Calvinists. That I would never even hear from a rank atheist. They've been worse than atheists. Yep, John 15:18, if the world hates you, keep in mind it hated me first. And hate, as Jesus said, is a precursor to murder. And Jesus said, it's hating someone without a cause. So, the point is, just to be familiar with the arguments, the claims, and the sources of them that a lot of their proponents don't even know about because they won't look because they like what it says. They like Luciferian teachings. And good to see you also, Crystal. I'm sorry if I missed anyone else, but I need to shut down. And also because my jaw's starting to hurt again, I have at least one, possibly two abscess teeth.
Hello.
This is my sister, Emlu.
Emlu, popping in.
There you go. There's Emlu. Yes, I am a real person. I'm not a made-up CGI. So I have a witness.
Eyewitness.
So anyway,
I do declare.
I need to shut down. So again, nice of all of you to come, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming. And let me hit the right buttons this time. I won't forget to do my outro. So let me find the buttons. Here we go.